We're ready? We're on. Good evening all. My name is Pete Halsey and I'm the CEO of the ACT Deafness Resource Centre. And with me tonight is David Brady, who's the Chair of Deafness Forum of Australia. Together we welcome you to our NDIS forum here in Canberra and thank you for coming. For the hearing impaired, we have a hearing loop for those with a telecall program in their hearing aids. We have CART for those who need to read to communicate. We have Auslan interpreting for those who use sign language as their means of communication, and audio amplification for those who actually hear normally but tonight find themselves at the back of the room. The message we will all get tonight will be the same. It's just a matter of how we access it that is different. David, can I ask you to say a few words, please?
Thank you, Pete. Just before I start, is there any more room in this room? There are 2 seats here for anybody who would like to come in and take a seat. I would like to include as many people as possible before we start. There's one seat over here. And there's one seat over there. There's one more. It's a bit cramped, but we'll get started. Okay, thank you. My name is David Brady. I am Chairman of Deafness Forum of Australia. I'm a resident of Canberra as well. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on. I pay my respects to elders, past and present, and elders from the other communities who may be here with us today or watching us on the webcam. I would like to acknowledge the 2 languages spoken here today, spoken English and Auslan. It's Deafness Forum's mission to ensure that full communications access provided to you at meetings such as this. We are here as part of an open forum to discuss the upcoming National Disability Insurance Scheme, or short NDIS. With particular reference to ACT residents who are deaf, hearing impaired, have a chronic ear disorder, and their families. I would like to welcome tonight our NDIS expert speakers and ACT parliamentarians who are here tonight. Sue Salthouse, co-chair of the NDIS expert panel. We have Kate Starrick, Director of National Disability Insurance Scheme Task Force, Disability ACT, and in charge of implementing the NDIS in the trial. Jeremy Hanson, the MLA, the Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Minister for Health, Family and Community Services, Housing, Veteran Affairs and Disabilities Services. Steve Dospot, the MLA, Shadow Minister of Education and Training, Sport and Recreation, the Ageing and ICT. Mr Nick Terrell, Chief of Staff for Dr Andrew Lee MP, Federal Member for Fraser. And of course Professor Anthony Hogan is also here tonight. We also receive apologies and best wishes for a successful forum from the Chief Minister of the ACT, Kate Gallagher, MLA. Also the Minister for Disabilities, Joy Birch, MLA. Andrew Barr, MLA, Minister for Community Services. We've also received an apology from Natalie Howson, Director General of the ACT Community Services Directorate. Also from the federal level, we received an apology and well-wishing from the Honourable Mark Butler MP, the Minister for Health and Ageing, with responsibility for hearing services. We also got apologies from Senator Jan McLucas, Senator Rachel Seward, Senator Kate Lundy, Senator Mitch Fifield. We all send an apology for tonight. Most importantly, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Canberrans. The federal government has this week released further details on the rules that will guide how the National Disability Insurance Scheme will work for people with disability, their families carers and service providers. The rules provide a level of detail on how people with a disability will be able to access the scheme and how the agency will determine what supports are reasonable to meet a person's needs. They also provide a guide to what kinds of supports will be funded and what supports are best delivered by other systems of support, like health or education systems. Deafness Forum will be studying these documents. We will offer our views to the government on behalf of the deafness sector. People with a disability, their family and carers will have further opportunity to provide feedback on the rules, but we only have 2 weeks to do so. I urge you to visit the Deafness Forum website. To find the link, it'll be up there to look at these new rules and guidelines. For those here tonight, we have some copies out the back you can pick up and read and provide feedback. About 26,000 people throughout Australia with significant and permanent disabilities, their families and carers will benefit from the first stage of the NDIS. That leaves a very large number of people out of the scheme at this point. The 5 launch sites in July this year are the Hunter in New South Wales, the Barwon area of Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, and I believe in July 2014, Canberra at the ACT. It is great to have so many people here with us tonight. It's a full house. Wow. There are many, many more people, I hope, out there on the webcam listening in and sharing our views and putting our message forward. I think we all have at least 3 things in common. We are passionate about the NDIS, and we want a national scheme that is the best of its kind in the world. We want a full funded commitment from future governments, state and federal, to make a scheme that is inclusive and recognises profound disadvantages caused by deafness, hearing impairment and chronic ear conditions. Also, I want to point out the Australians who are deaf, hearing impaired, have an ear disorder, and their families simply all would like a fair go in Australian society. We want to break the current cycle of diswelfare. Last month, the ACT Minister of Disability, Joy Birch MLA, announced that 2,500 Canberrans with disability and enduring psychosocial disability would begin to receive support from the NDIS in 2014 and 15. The number of people supported by the NDIS is likely to increase to approximately 5,000 clients in the NDIS by June 2016. Before I hand it over, I'd just like to welcome Gabe Rotman MP, for Minister for Canberra. Welcome tonight. Now, Pete, would you mind taking us through how the event's going to happen?
Thank you, David. And yes, another welcome to Gay for getting here. I know there was difficulty to rearrange schedules, and that's good. Okay, please be respectful to all of our speakers and questioners. Members of the audience will be given the opportunity to ask questions, and when the question is asked, to ensure full communication access, you must first indicate if you are speaking by voice or signing. If you have a question, please come to the front of the room, and there's a little cross to stand on, and use the microphone. The microphone, in conjunction with a hearing loop around this room, is king. By that I mean, for many of us, speech is difficult to manage. Therefore, please understand that the microphone is the one, the person holding it is able to speak. Everyone else, please listen. The exception to this rule, of course, is our colleagues who sign. However, if you do have a microphone, please speak normally, do not race your words, and we will all be able to manage. Thank you. For our viewers around Australia, If you're having trouble reading the captions tonight, we will have a full transcript of tonight's forum at this web address in a week. We are here tonight to listen to our speakers provide information about their NDIS needs, their hearing story. I apologise though if we cut you off a little bit during your statement. We've really only got a short time and we're hoping that each one is no more than 2 to 3 minutes of information. On to business. The NDIS, as many of you would have appreciated, is the most advanced and far-reaching disability support program that Australian governments have ever signed up to. It will reach far into our futures, affecting all of those like us here tonight who have a disability, to manage our lives, to be able to dream and reach out to achieve our potential in life, in service, and in making a contribution to Australia. How it operates and what we do with it will also influence disability support programs in other countries. We are being watched. Friends, we are here this evening to express our sentiments, to tell our hearing needs stories, and to try and show you, our politicians, and our public service regulators, the ones who will make the decisions on how the NDIS will work, especially in this launch phase, that our cause is just and we need to be considered and included. Please remember us. I'd now like to invite Kate Starrick, Director, ACT NDIS Task Force, and Sue Salthouse, Co-Chair of the NDIS Expert Panel, to tell us where we are up to at the moment.
Thank you. Okay. Yep. Firstly, thank you, Pete, for I guess inviting Natalie this evening, and I'm here in Natalie's place. It is a real honour to be here, and it's wonderful to see the crowd and the group that has gathered here, and I've already been privileged enough to hear a number of stories this evening from people. So the launch in the ACT, as you know, the ACT government agreed with the Commonwealth government that the ACT would be one of the first launch sites in Australia, but we're also the only whole of jurisdiction launch site nationally. And for the ACT, and in a jurisdiction of our size, that creates enormous opportunity to inform what will happen in Australia, but also given that the first people will join under the NDIS in July 2014, it also, I guess, gives us an opportunity to learn what happens in the first stages of launch interstate. Where we are up to at the moment, you will have potentially heard Minister Birch's statement to the Assembly about the progress of the NDIS, that the first people would be transitioning, those people who are eligible and ACT residents would be transitioning from July 2014, and in the meantime the Australian and ACT government are investing in what are some known needs for the disability community, people with disability and psychosocial disability. And I think the Minister's office will be announcing more about that quite shortly. But it is looking at addressing needs, particularly for people with high and complex needs and people who are leaving school at that stage in life. But also, I guess, looking to address people's needs in a way that's more flexible than what we've been able to do in the past. So I guess watch this space. Sue, do you want to talk about... the task force, I guess, is working closely with the expert panel, and I'd pass over to you.
Thank you very much. And is it okay if I stay here for the cameras, or should I move over? stay there. So I too would like to thank you all, especially Deafness Forum and Deafness Resource Centre, for inviting us here today, and to give you an opportunity to speak, and also to give us an opportunity to listen to your stories, because you can imagine within the expert panel, which offers advice to the government on aspects of implementation of this scheme, we have such a diverse sector that it's not possible to have a representative for every facet of the disability sector speaking there on the panel. So that means that these sort of information sessions, where we can be sure that we get a clear view of your needs, are very important to the work of the expert panel. Now, we do have, I think, 13 members on the panel at the moment, and of those, 4 people are people with disabilities. Admittedly, 3 of us are in wheelchairs. One, David Heckendorf, has a speech impairment in addition to being in a wheelchair. And one of our representatives is blind. So I feel very deeply that this meeting tonight is an essential part of what we need to put together in the ACT. The other thing to bear in mind is that although we're moving towards a no-fault insurance scheme, and to enable people to have more choice and control over how any allocation of funding is spent, in our first tranche of looking at people in the ACT, we are looking at people with high and complex needs. Now, I think that one of the things when we come to looking at the community that is for people who are deaf or have hearing impairment, is that you do have high and complex needs, but they're very different needs, because they arise from the degree to which you are shut out of employment through communication difficulties. So they're not so clear as the high and complex needs that somebody who perhaps needs 24-hour and 24/7 actual personal care. So whilst I'm not denying that these needs within your community are very complex, they're not. We are looking at personal care needs in some of our first instances. That said, everything needs to be taken into account, and those of you who are familiar with the Productivity Commission initial report on long-term care and support would be aware that one of the main factors is that people need support to operate efficiently and effectively and be included in the community. And that means employment needs being met. So whilst there's a lot of the edges of what the NDIS will provide at a national level eventually, there are still many, many things being worked out. And I do urge you to look at the NDIS rules which were published yesterday and which are open for comment, as David said, I think until March the 23rd. So they're in 7 parts. So it does mean that you can concentrate on the part that most affects you. The first part in the list that's published on the Commonwealth Government website is for children. The second part is for participants. Now, are people aware that this is such a shift that we are moving our vocabulary? People in the NDIS won't be clients, they won't be consumers, they'll be co-participants, and that's why the language has changed. So when you look at that list of rules under 7 different sections, don't skip over the one that says participants, because that's you. Okay, I'll hand back to Kate now.
Thank you.
I just wondered if there was anything else you wanted to add.
Do we take questions now, or?
Yes. Can I ask for questions? Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask at the moment? Thank you.
I'm Anthony Hogan from ANU and the University of Canberra. We appreciate that the next year or two is a trial. My question initially would be, in which jurisdiction is there a trial for hearing services for deafness services? If we agree that our constituency involves 20% of the population and that our needs are different, surely we would have a trial somewhere in Australia. Our community of people with profound and severe loss are of an equal number to the Aboriginal community. We are a significant group in this society. Where will our trial be?
If I can answer for, there is the launches that have been set up in the different jurisdictions are not focusing on the needs of a particular group. They are focusing on a population that reside in a particular area. If you look at the legislation and the rules, the launch is set up to test those population or the assumptions that are built around the disability needs in that regional area rather than the needs of a particular group. However, there is work being done on how to evaluate the effectiveness of this approach for people with different needs. That evaluation is looking at does this approach help people to participate more fully in the community? So much of the work is being done around working in a different way with people with disabilities to plan with them, not for them, but plan with them about what their needs, aspirations and goals are, and then what are the reasonable and necessary supports that go with that. I think the launch is a learning experience that will be evaluated as it goes. Do you want to add anything?
Yes, and I think following on from what Kate says, people's eligibility for assistance to be included in the community and employment will be in what they call, eventually it will be in what they call a wide gateway, and that people will have many ways of beginning to access the scheme. So in the ACT it will be a little different in that, but we will again be trying to get the information out that say that one tranche of our transition period is starting, and get it out as widely as possible so that as many people as possible have an opportunity to participate. But as Kate has said, another important aspect of this scheme is that it moves away from diagnoses of disabilities, so that it moves towards what your needs are to participate in the community, and you will get reasonable and assessed as having reasonable and necessary supports to enable you to participate in the community. So it's a different mindset for all of us, and even the people who provide support, for them it's a different mindset altogether, and that makes, I find it almost on a daily basis, things that make me stop short and say, oh no, that's the old thinking. We want to do it in a new way. So I think that's why we'll be looking at people being able to express what their support needs are. And in the gateway eventually, there'll be online checklists, most likely, that you can use. There'll be person-to-person, face-to-face things that you can use to determine whether you're going to be eligible to be a participant or not.
Can I say one more thing? It would be it would be good to know, when you talked about, your question was about evaluating, I guess, the impact for the group that you were talking about. One of the things that would be good to know is what are the types of measurements or key indicators that it would be good to collect in terms of evaluating the impact that the NDIS has. So that information would be useful for us to pass on to the agency.
Does anybody have any questions? I actually got one. I just mentioned here, you got 2,500 residents of the ACT relaunch in 2014 as participants, co-participants, I think the word come in. I don't envy you, but you have a very difficult apology. Would you like me to repeat that again? Sorry, my apologies. I'll repeat that. Basically, you've said about 2,500 people will be selected or picked out of a hat, or can you sort of go through that as participants? Mm-hmm. Can you sort of explain to the floor, because history of deaf, hard of hearing and chronic ear disorders have always been one of ignorance. Yeah. We have always been in the corner. Yeah. We've never been included. In this room, I look in this room and I don't see disability, I see a community. I see people. And we want to be included in the community. Problem is, the communication, as you can see, the assets is very important. Now, we can go on about that, but please, can you just give us an idea for our community how the government, or what your instructions are to pick the 2,500 people, and then is that 5,000 added on the 2,500 people, or is that just another tranche of people to be put in? And then what's happening further from there? Because we would like to know. Okay. Thank you.
In the bilateral agreement, which if you go to the COAG website, you'll see there's an intergovernmental agreement, and there are the different schedules or the bilateral agreements with each state and territory. And you will see for the ACT agreement that there are 2,500 people transitioning in 2014. I'm going to get numbers mixed up, I know it. And then in 2015, there's another 2,500 people over that period of time to I think a total of 5,025, I think. We have yet to establish exactly how people will, exactly in what order, if you like, people will transition over those 2 years. What we are working on is there are two, parallel logics that we can apply. The first is who will transition and how. The second is what is the tolerance of the provider sector to actually start to work with those people. So you will have seen nationally, or in the Productivity Commissioner's report, that they're expecting the provider sector to double in size. So we want to transition people under an NDIS in a way that enables them to receive the services that they are seeking, rather than transition people too fast for the provider sector to respond to that need. So they're the things that we're considering. It won't be by diagnosis, I can tell you that. But we are working through with governments, and the other thing we do need to work through with people, with the community and with the providers about how we work through those logics. Does that answer your question? In that I can't say that exactly how it will be. In the bilateral, you will also see that this is a decision that we have to come to in February 2014, so it's very early days yet.
Can I just add, though, that in the expert panel, and with the task force being there as well, we have talked about numbers going in that on day one there won't be 2,500 people in the scheme. We've talked about how they would come in over 3 months, at the 3 months, or at the beginning at the 3 month level, at the 6 month level. If you like, it's not exactly decided yet, but in those other jurisdictions which are going to start without a transition year, which I don't know how they're going to do, but in the other jurisdictions, which are the Hunter Valley, the Barwon region, and South Australia and Tasmania, both of those latter two are just doing specific age groups. They're going to start in 2013. Now, the Launch Transition Agency, which will be the overall administering body, and I suppose it's not going to mimic Medicare, but it's something of the size and complexity and Australia-wide coverage of something like Medicare. They have already started recruiting for local area coordinators. Now, we use that term local area coordinator here in the ACT, and it means something very different from what a local area coordinator is in WA, and it's also something different from what a local area coordinator will be under the NDIS. So the local area coordinators will be the people who talk to you in the first instance. When you knock on the door and say, well, look, I think I'm eligible. Now that we haven't decided on the timeline yet because, as Kate said, it's early days, but you can imagine that during that in the lead up to the middle of the year in 2014, there will be recruiting for those local area coordinators and training of those coordinators, and there will be the beginning of people being able to come to the organisation so that when it's ready to start in 2014 here in the ACT, there will be a mechanism in place for that assessment of people's eligibility.
My loop's back on. Have anybody got any questions for Kate or Sue? The gentleman over there. Gentlemen, just wait a moment. It's a microphone.
I may have misinterpreted something, but I understand there is 2 weeks for comment. I would say I was extremely disappointed that there's such what I would regard as an absurd rush for something which is going to go into the future. 2 weeks to me is literally insane.
Thanks very much for raising that. This is at the Commonwealth level, and things are moving very quickly. However, as you know, the NDIS bill came out at the end of last year, and there was people were able to get submissions into that, I think, until the end of January, till the 25th of January, and then then that's gone to a Senate inquiry, and there are the people who put in submissions and people who've been selected by the Senate committee are talking directly at the Commonwealth level to that inquiry at the moment. Once the NDIS bill was out, there was also a draft paper put out by the Commonwealth Government, a draft consultation on the rules. And there was quite a reasonable submission time to get the comments on the draft rules back. And I think they also went in about the 12th of February. I'm not sure on that either. So the comments on the draft rules went in on the 12th of February. Since that time, the government has said, okay, we've taken in, I don't know, they would have had comments back, I would say, from hundreds of submissions. about those draft rules, and so between the 12th of February and now what we're up to, the 5th of March, they have now put out their next rules for consultation. So in fact it's part of a rolling process. So I agree that 2 weeks is a short amount of time, but it is part of, I guess you could say, by the end of it will be nearly a 3-month process. So I do urge you as well, if you go to the Senate Inquiry website, on the Senate Inquiry website you can read the transcripts day by day of what people have been saying to the inquiry. Now yesterday the ACT's Craig Wallace, who is a member of our expert panel and who is also the chair of People with Disabilities Australia, and that is the largest cross-disability organisation in Australia. Craig presented to the Senate inquiry, and I think if you read that and the strong words that he had to keep focus on how it is how people with disabilities are wanting that choice and control, and he pointed out specific places in the bill where it's not yet thought from people with disabilities perspective that there's enough ability for that choice and control yet. So those words are going into the Senate inquiry, and I urge you to go and have a look at them. And I urge you to pick out, if you're going to pick out any of those 7 places for feedback on the rules, I urge you to pick out the one on participants, and I urge you to pick out the one on nominees. Now, nominees are the people who you might appoint to assist you in doing things. Some people who have very high support needs will need to nominate somebody to look at their correspondence. Some people will just need to nominate somebody to assist them implementing their plan. And that's so, but I urge you to look at those 2 sections, and those of you who are here who have children with disabilities, then please look at the rules which will govern how your children will have access through the legislation.
Okay, Sue, thank you for that. Just before I pass over to Anthony, one more. Anthony, your hand was up. Anthony will speak to us.
If you could just clarify me on the issue of the children, because the rules basically say that what's out in the system are services already provided by others, including legislation for universal service obligations. All our kids are covered by the Hearing Services Act. So does that mean we're all excluded?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I'm sorry. The NDIS legislation, the only way I can answer that is the NDIS is a national legislation. The rules that, the information that has been, and I'm not a lawyer, but the rules have been developed to take account for those aspects of the scheme that we will, well, not to take account of the aspects of the scheme, but there is greater capacity to alter what is in the rules than I understand that there is in the legislation. In terms of how it interacts with other legislation, the Australian Government or Commonwealth Government group that are drafting the legislation are looking at that interaction. Is that legislation that you're referring to national or state? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not able to comment.
And Anthony, it is true that not only that Hearing Services Act, but state legislation where the states have jurisdiction over current operation of providing disability services, they're all under state legislation, and the coordination of that has to go on at the same time. So there are things that we can't answer.
And I think in the comments against the rules, that kind of concern would be one that could be fed back through the feedback with the rules, I think so.
Question, is that all right? Thank you. Just quickly, before I pass it on to some other people in the room, you might be able to answer it or you might not be able to answer it. My biggest fear, and my community's fear, and a lot of Australians who are deaf or hearing impaired, is the prices. The prices of hearing aids, cochlear implants, getting interpreters, services, because the government have given the money to, like, one of the service providers, like a natural business person will go, great, we can just put our prices up a bit because the money is out there, we'll just increase our business. And for example, the hearing aids, which I'm sure you hear the stories come out, will go from $6,000 to $10,000, a $4,000 price hike. Maybe you might be able to answer it, or maybe the politicians might answer it. Who is actually going to monitor and put a watchdog or a referee on these prices? Because it happens in Britain, it happens in other countries, it might happen here, so you might be able to share that with us.
I wouldn't want to answer something where there's a politician in the room who might be able to answer it. And I don't think I can. What I can say is that, as you've alluded to, it's happened in other countries and through other experiences. And I will say that we're not, or that in our discussions with the agency, that they are aware of the trends and impact of rolling out a scheme such as, well, there hasn't been a scheme rolled out in the way that this has been rolled out in other countries, but that has been, and it's a concern with a whole range of equipment and services as well. So I'm sorry I can't give more detail.
Before I ask Amanda to ask her question, not Amanda, this young lady, sorry, let me say that should the government want to see and to gain some very quick and very positive runs on the board in the implementation of these 2,500, this program where you're training coordinators and trying to find people who can help people with a disability to manage and to make their decisions, if you wanted to come and see us, the hearing impaired community, we could manage our needs pretty quickly and give you some excellent runs on the board. It seems to me that the ACT is lagging somewhere. We're starting in 2014. Everybody else is starting this year, and there's reasons for it, and I don't know all of them. But we have many skills and an understanding, a very personal understanding of our needs and our community, and I think you should take hold of that. Now, look, let me just...
I agree.
Yes, so, look, we might be interested to hear from you shortly from the government. That would be rather important to us, and you get good runs on the board. Can I just say that this young lady would like to ask a question? Yes.
Do I give this to somebody?
You're right,
I would like
fine.
to know, for people who live in Queanbeyan or just over the border, will we still be able to access Canberra services? Can we still be covered by the NDIS if we just live across the border, if we already access those services in the ACT?
That's a good question. As you know, New South Wales have signed an agreement to do a whole of state launch. So they've signed up for launch, and then they've also signed up to full NDIS across their state. They are rolling that out over the years. The ACT launch for NDIS is for ACT residents only under the age of 65. We would welcome any discussion from New South Wales around how they are phasing in full scheme in New South Wales. So the answer to that is that through the NDIS launch, only ACT residents under the age of 65 will be eligible.
Okay, thank you for Kate. we have one more question, because I was wanted more questions later, but we'll one more with Hayden, and that's it for now. We've got other things to move.
I'm not sure whether it's a question or a statement. Hayden Dorr. I'm a member of Better Hearing Australia in Canberra, but I'm speaking as Hayden Dorr. I've heard nothing this evening that makes me feel anything other than pessimism about the NDIS covering people with a hearing impairment. It's an invisible handicap. You can't look at me and tell whether I have a hearing impairment or not. You can't look at anyone, generally speaking, and assess that. The hearing impaired are generally not organised. They are generally feeling in isolation. They are silent. They do not complain. We try and complain for them. There are about 4 million of them in Australia. The disability is permanent and the numbers are increasing. Even on the expert committee of 13, given the large numbers of hearing impaired people, one might have expected someone on that committee, the expert panel, to at least have had a hearing loss, perhaps combined with some other disability. So, given that if hearing impaired people do get assistance, they can continue working, paying their taxes, getting satisfied by having a job and so on, I'm just making the point that I can't see any reason for hearing impaired people to really get excited about the NDIS in that it may cover their disability, on what I've heard this evening.
Can I...
I wish I could provide I guess, a level of reassurance that around exactly who will receive supports under an NDIS, exactly what organisations will be part of an NDIS at this point. The information that is out there is what is in the eligibility in the legislation, what the rules say about the participants who will be a participant under the NDIS, and that's the information that I can point you to. When people do approach the agency, when the agency starts up in the ACT, there is that self-assessment component to include the supports that people need to participate in work, to participate socially, economically, sports and recreation. The eligibility is based on the supports that an individual needs or the impact that a disability has on a person that affects their capacity to participate, rather than what is the cause of that disability. So at this point I'm unable to say that people with this cause are definitely in and people with this cause are definitely not in.
Can I...
Peter...
No, I'm going to cut this off for the moment.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, I just thought it's that alongside the NDIS, we need to also remember that this is support needs for people, and that it doesn't mean that education or employment or transport or any of the other areas of our lives can abdicate their responsibility or have the NDIS pay for their responsibility to give you the needed supports that you are not getting at the moment. And that is another fight. The CART, the interpreters, the NRS, those things must be if you have a need in your employment for some augmentative device, then you should be able to get it from your employer. So, you know, Sorry. Okay. So all those departments and areas also have to commit to this scheme. And there have been very strong words that there will not be cost shifting. And you already see some indications every now and again of not in the ACT but in other jurisdictions that they will say that, education doesn't have to pay for that anymore, it's in the NDIS. Well, to a large extent, the support needs to get a child to school, to maybe feed them their lunch, that will have to be taken care of by the NDIS. But the support needs for an assistant teacher, that's the responsibility of education. And I think we need to, despite the wry laughter in the room, I think we've got to remember that all of these other departments will also need to be meeting their obligations under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And it's all there, and everything comes back as well to that they need to commit. So we've been underfunded and underrepresented in all those areas as well.
Thank you, Sue.
Sorry.
Before we go any further, I'd like to ask perhaps Jeremy and then Gay for some comments, please. And can you come to the front? Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. And for those that I haven't met before, my name is Jeremy Hanson. I'm the Leader of the Opposition, and as David said before, I'm also the Shadow Minister for Disabilities. I'll just be brief. The ACT, the Canberra Liberals, have given our bipartisan support to the NDIS. We think it's a good idea, and we will be supporting it. But as you've seen tonight, it's not a panacea. It isn't going to be something that solves all the problems that we have, and its implementation is going to be complex, it is going to be difficult, and it is going to be costly. So what we will be doing as an opposition as we move forward is making sure that we're engaging with communities like you to understand what the issues are, to make sure that as the government's going through its process to implement the NDIS, that where possible we can make representations on your behalf and identify where there are problems, and that's the role that I see that we'll be taking. So we are supportive. We'll be doing everything we can to make sure it's got the funding and can be all that it can be, but understanding that it is as complex as it is, we will be doing what we can to represent you and make sure that it actually satisfies your needs. So that's really all I've got to say, and unless anyone's got any questions, I'll hand over to Guy. Has anyone got any questions? Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy, and I haven't had a chance to congratulate you on your new appointment. Congratulations. Oh, the cross. I beg your pardon. Hi, it's a great pleasure to be here tonight. I probably met many of you at the NDIS forum that my colleague Andrew Lee and I held with Jan McLucas last year. That was incredibly informative and invaluable forum. And I really appreciated the time that you took out during the day to come to that forum and present your ideas. Like for Jeremy, tonight for me is a chance for me to hear your views on the implementation process and to get a sense of what concerns you and what you're worried will be missed, most importantly. Now, I go back into sitting next week, and so it's been really good for me. I do actually have another commitment after this, so I've got to leave shortly. But just to let you know what I will be taking to Jan and other ministers next week. Sorry, these are very good things in some ways, but I'll be picking up that price issue and most importantly the monitoring of it, and I'll be going to speak to Jan about that. It's a very, very good point, and I will be picking that up. I'll also be picking up that issue about the legislation and that overlap of the NDIS with other federal legislation and where that fits and whether it's going to be sort of captured in the broader legislation or the broader implementation programs, how it's going to work, because there's also that overlay there with Commonwealth and state and territory legislation too. So I want to get a sense of what's going on with that. Just to let you know, I am chair of the International Legal Caucus Committee too, so that may be of interest to my... Pardon? Okay, that may be of interest to the other caucus members as well. I'm just conscious of the time. Okay. The other element that I'll be taking is the price hikes and just the fact that the hearing impaired do not feel as if they're being listened, or not listened to, but captured and considered during this whole process. I will definitely be underscoring that with Jan McLucas as well as the Minister. So there are a few of the elements that I will be taking to the Ministers and the Parliamentary Secretary next week. And if there's others that you want me to do to take to them, then please I'll leave you my cards and you can actually. Am I slowly enough? You've got a question. Okay. I'll leave you my card and just email me with those questions or comments, because I do know, I know that just in terms of in my engagement with Robert Altamore as well, that the vision impaired community is also concerned about their issues being factored in.
Thank you. I just have a question. It's probably a quick one from Dr. Anthony Hogan. The question is basically on Monday night in the Q&A, there was a fair question about the Employment Assistance Fund, the $6,000 to go up. Tonight we've heard that the NDIS, I've read in the rules, they might take it over it, and then I heard that it might not take over. It will be the responsibility of the employers. The other question I have is a lot of people in this room also work for small businesses or start-up businesses on their own. Now, my understanding is that the Employment Assistance Fund doesn't help them. I have some friends of mine who are deaf or hearing impaired trying to start their own business up. They cannot get access. These rules does not help that at all, because you're saying responsibility of the employer. Would you please take that to the Minister, Bill Shorten, to maybe answer the question a bit more substantively, and he answered on Monday. Thank you. That's my question.
Okay, well, it's more, it's something I will take on board. Thank you very much for that. As someone who was in small business before I came into this life, I am acutely aware of what actually goes on in small business and some of the challenges they face too. But again, it gets back to the sort of the overlap of government programs, legislation, and the state and territory and Commonwealth overlay as well. So I will be taking that back.
Well, first can I thank both Gail and Jeremy and the representative from the other officers for just being here. I think this is my first when people have turned up, which is awesome. 3 points. We've been locked out of the National Disability Strategy. I can be the grumbly sociologist and argue all night how we're going to be left out of the NDIS. The issue for us is we need a national strategy for our sector. Sure, we don't expect the NDIS to be the panacea, but we see it creating a whole bunch of more gaps. And the issue for our sector is we've basically our lives have been run by audiologists, and the current system will not take us out of the medical model. It's just going to lock us further in there, and we won't have the choice or the control that we need. The government has already had a 10-year trial of NDIS with the hearing services, and we've seen the audiologists corporatise. The businesses have come in, they've done to the prices what David has said, and this is just going to lock us further into that unless there is an overall strategy. So the question for us to take back is, where do we fit in the overall system? Again, hearing is the only one run by the Commonwealth. Everything else is run by the states. This is a hangover from the war. We've never been actually looked at properly because we're controlled by the medical system.
Thank you for that. Do you want that strategy to be looked at in the context of the rollout of the implementation, or as a separate process?
I'll defer to my president on that one, if you don't mind, Gail, but we need to know where we fit and how the system overall will work for us. I see some great benefits for people of working age, potentially, but, there are some challenges there.
Okay. Again, can I take that on board? And the other issue that I will take to the Minister and also the Parliamentary Secretary is the notion of the government departments and their responsibilities under this. I was a bit surprised actually to hear your guffawing, I think, intimated that government departments weren't playing their role, playing their part in terms of providing supportive work environments with particular devices. again, I was a public servant before I had the small business, and I found that the workplaces I worked in were very supportive. So I'd just be interested to know which Commonwealth government agencies aren't playing their role, and I'll get on the phone to the secretary and harass them about it, because that's just not good enough. But again, I will raise that with the ministers directly as well.
I think Sue would like.
One of the things that I'm not sure if you're aware that the Practical Design Fund has given money across Australia to a number of projects to investigate different ways that things may be organised. One of the very interesting Practical Design Fund projects is in Queensland, where people with disabilities are forming a disabled people's organisation, and that will be a cooperative. And I'm wondering if we need to, and I think about that in terms of buying. I will think of that in terms of purchasing wheelchairs. At the moment, we're under the same sort of regime, in that purchasing a wheelchair in Australia will cost you $10,000, and you can see it online for $3,000 US. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Where equipment providers have monopolies, we will be at their beck and call. Now, this is not from an expert panel point of view, this is my very personal point of view. And that another thing that is being looked at through the Launch Transition Agency is what they call e-marketing. Now, this may not apply so much to equipment, but it will apply to service provision. And I'm sure that all of you would be, everybody knows about eBay, or you may have used a service. I use the service House Sitters. When I go away, I look up, everybody's listed on this website, and I look up people who are willing to do house sitting in my area, and I contact them. And in that particular case, no money changes hands. But there are sites called Need a Babysitter. Where the organisation of people getting in touch with each other is done online, and where, although there would have to be external regulation, where regulation is a little bit done automatically, because if you purchase a service from somebody and they're rotten at it, you blog it online and they're blacklisted and they don't get any more work. So that's just very rudimentary e-marketing. But we've got to be I'm hearing what you say about equipment price hikes. Maybe there will be people who'll think, well, how can they overcome that and get together and work out when there's more ability to have flexibility with funding. But naturally, at the same time as we might say that, we will have to put in safeguards and some quality assurances, because a lot of people across the disability sector are very vulnerable to exploitation in all sorts of ways, and we will have to, I think, agree to a certain amount of regulation so that the vulnerable are not exploited and kept safe. That's my personal viewpoint on what we need to do.
Thank you, Sue. That's really appreciated. Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah, I think it's battery. Just one more thing for the government. Just a reminder, we're talking about vulnerability and exploitation. I just wanted to make sure to raise awareness with you again. I've already raised it with the certain ministers. Our language, we have two languages spoken, English and Auslan. I have been trying to find information on the NDIS, a very important legislation. There is not one video of an interpretation of Auslan to engage our community.
Oh.
And I may add as well, in government trying to explain things, also we need to know Auslan. And when you have videos, please, captions. That's what we need, because that's what Sue just alluded to there. We are vulnerable if you don't have information. Communication for us is king. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Before I call on my colleague Liz to talk to us, I think Gay's going to go in a minute. I'm going to give Gay a copy of a video, and I've got one for all our special guests. This is about understanding hearing loss. It runs for about 15 minutes. It was made in the 1990s and uses a standard weather report and demonstrates very, very clearly what it's like to be a person with a hearing impairment, deaf or hearing loss, and how they try to manage in society and just what they miss out on. There's young people at university, there are older folks. It's very worth watching. Please watch it, please keep it, please pass it to your colleagues. I've got more if you'd like some. And thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you everyone, and I look forward to seeing you around the track. It has been, since I was elected in 2010, it's been my mission to talk more slowly. So I will continue on that mission. I look forward to seeing you around the traps, and please note that those ideas have been taken on board. I'm seeing Bill next week. I'll see Jan, and I will follow them through. In terms of communicating them back to you, how do I get those responses back to you? Lovely man. Okay. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Gay. Travel safe. Can I now ask my colleague Liz Ganser to come forward and tell you a little bit about her hearing story, please?
First, I'd just like to say something. Sorry, I can't remember your name. Over there? I'll stand on the cross? Okay. This might be a little bit simplistic, but I can remember when my parents bought their first VCR, it cost $1,000 because it was new, it was, commodity, it was a luxury item, so it cost a lot of money. Here? Okay, I'm not used to this, sorry. I've only had my hearing aids since December. I don't know how they work very well. Now, everyone, I'd be very surprised if everyone in this room doesn't have either a VCR or a DVD player or whatever you want to call it, and they don't cost that much. But when I need hearing aids, they cost $4,000 each. It's a captive market. If I don't need hearing aids, I won't buy one. I need hearing aids. I couldn't afford them, fortunately for me. Someone's wife died and he donated his hearing aids to the Deafness Resource Centre, and I was the lucky recipient. I feel very humble that they were given to me. I don't really, even today, feel like I deserve them. I knew that I had a hearing loss for a long time. I used to work night duty. I'm a registered nurse. I work at a local hospital here in Canberra. Couldn't hear the buzzer, would misunderstand what patients were saying, felt uncomfortable taking verbal or oral orders over a telephone for medication, felt that I needed to withdraw from direct patient contact, but because I felt that I was at risk of harming someone because I couldn't understand everything that was going on around me. I felt like I was irritating my colleagues because they were constantly telling me that one of my patients had pressed their buzzer and I couldn't hear the buzzer, so I didn't know that they had rung. So I withdrew myself from direct patient contact. Now work as a discharge liaison officer. I can have a conversation with my husband in the car. We can hear each other. It's not World War III with me constantly yelling at him saying, I can't understand what you're saying, can you please speak up? I have a 6-year-old daughter. I can brush her hair. She can talk to me without looking at me. I can understand what she's saying. I can't explain what it's like to have my hearing aids. And I did mention earlier that I would do serious bodily harm to someone who tried to take them away from me. So don't don't cross with me. I don't feel comfortable going up and telling people that I have a hearing loss. It's taken me a long time to acknowledge the fact that I have a hearing loss. I'm not completely deaf. I don't need Auslan. I wish I could. I'd love to learn how to sign. I'm not profoundly deaf, but I do need hearing aids, and I would wish that it would be, not that everyone would have hearing aids, but the price would drop, because we need hearing aids. It's a necessity, it's not a luxury. It shouldn't cost as much as it costs. I'm sorry, it just shouldn't. So, sorry, thank you.
That was wonderful, and I know exactly where you're coming from, but you do deserve them, and you should be very pleased, and I know you're thrilled to have them, and we're thrilled that we've been able to do it. For those who don't know, the DRC runs a hearing aid bank, and a number of people bring their hearing aids into us, and we have a connection with Kimberly Gordon in Canberra Audiology, and she fits the hearing aids for our people who come through the door. I'm just sorry that I don't have more hearing aids available. I had a man in tears the other day, not able to afford them. I often have young people, young families in. It's always the mother who misses out. You see, when there's a certain amount of money, you pay the rent, you pay your house payment, you organise tucker, you look after the kids and their shoes, schooling comes into it, and way, way, way down the bottom comes the mother who needs a hearing aids, and often the dad. My mum was 50 before we could afford any. We had no money. And I remember my dad was an impatient man. He loved us, but he was an impatient bugger. And he would scream at my mother, for Christ's sake, Phil, listen. And she would say to him, I am Robert, I just can't hear you. It took me a long time to not be ashamed of my mother's hearing loss or ashamed of mine. I wouldn't wear them for a very long time. And now I'm that proud of my cochlear implant and my hearing aid, which each 4 years cost me $16,000, let alone batteries every 3 days, until the day I die. And I manage. I love it. I can hear a clock tick. Take them off. I could not hear a jet engine in this room. Absolutely necessity for us. Can I ask my colleague Amanda is going to talk to us and tell us about her needs and her family issues, please.
Hi everyone. My name's Amanda and I'm deaf. I use Auslan as my primary mode of communication, and I wanted to share with you, as a deaf person, my need to be included in the NDIS for communication access, not only for myself but also for my family and my deaf brother and my other deaf friends. For my communication access, which makes me and enables me to become an independent person, I cannot be that independent person unless I have communication access. I always use a NATI level 2 or level 3 interpreter to meet my needs. I use real-time captioning and open captioning on television, at the cinema and on DVDs. I use SMS through my mobile. I have flashing lights for my door or fire alarms at home. And I use the NRS, the National Relay Service, to make phone calls with hearing people. And that enables me to be an independent person. Without that, I would be far more withdrawn and isolated. I use NATI Level 3 interpreters to communicate to anything to do with my 5 children, so I can make sure that they can access a good education and that their future is a good one. If I don't have good communication access, then I can't provide the assistance they need through their life. I need communication access for my work so I can communicate with other staff members and my employer. If I plan to promote and have a career, I don't want to be sitting in a corner. I want to be an assertive adult and be included. Thank you. For medical situation and for medical reasons, when I go to a doctor, I must have an interpreter. And this is to make sure that I am ensuring that my health, I am receiving informed information about my health as well as medication needs for my children. If I'm given the wrong information, I may incorrectly medicate my children. Just recently, I had to go to Sydney for my daughter who has epilepsy, which is a very scary experience as a deaf person to have an interpreter, particularly one that I didn't know, give me information about the drugs that I needed to give her, and for me to be able to ensure that, even though it was a very overwhelming situation, that I felt empowered, and having that interpreter there provided me with that access. I rely on captioning on television so that I can understand and enjoy the joke with my family during relaxation time, and we can receive equal access. I'm not the only one sitting there twiddling my thumbs when all of the others are laughing hilariously at whatever's happening on the television. And I don't want to feel stupid like that. Often I use SMS, text messaging, to talk with my children, my friends and my work colleagues. Without that communication access, I'm sure I would become much more isolated, my self-esteem would suffer, and I could even suffer mental health problems. It's very, very important that the NDIS supports me and recognises the importance of my communication access needs and those of the remaining deaf community. We have the right to be included and treated as equals, just as the hearing community expects equality. And thank you for hearing and watching my talk. I'm very nervous. I'm not quite sure why. I'm sorry I signed so quickly it made the interpreter speak so fast.
Thank you, Amanda. Can I ask Joanne if she would like to tell us a little bit, please?
Hi everyone. I haven't prepared anything, so I'll just wing it. I was diagnosed with otosclerosis when I was 33, and I had a 1-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, and that's when I first got my hearing aids. And over the years, the expense of the hearing aid has meant that I have delayed updating it when I've needed a new one, and as Pete said, mums will push things off because there are other expenses. And in my case, I'm the primary earner in our family. My husband can't work because he has a neck injury that precludes him from undertaking paid work. So it's all up to me. I can't not participate in the workforce, and I have my otosclerosis is worsening, and I'm off to the ear, nose and throat surgeon in April and wondering what I'm in for, what he's going to recommend. And obviously I want to be able to take the best option he offers me, but it'll set our finances back considerably. At my age, I'm not my hearing aid's not covered by Medicare, and it's also not covered by my top-of-the-line, very expensive private health insurance, which has covered my son's ankle operation, my husband's knee operation, my, over the years, CAT scans and MRIs and other very expensive medical services, but it won't cover my hearing aids because I'm too young. I have to be over, 55 or something before my particular cover will fund it. And so I get furious when I hear the ad on TV, which has been playing lately, someone saying, oh, I have this insurance and I don't need to pay for my, I don't need hearing aids or hip replacements, so I'm happy with my level of cover. And the thing is, deafness isn't just about elderly people. It can hit anyone in the community, from newborns to people in their 90s. And yeah, obviously when I go to the ENT specialist, he's going to hit me up with a pretty exciting program to improve my the aids I use to hear, but the money will have to come out of my mortgage, and I don't see how I'm looking down the future wondering how I'm ever going to pay the mortgage off if it's always up to me to fund these incredibly expensive technologies, which I'm really grateful for, because I can then participate in the workforce. And one very positive note is that thanks to the support of the Deafness Resources Centre, who I came to in terrible frustration in January, and Better Hearing Australia, I'm feeling like I'm able to manage my deafness better, and I've received some assistive listening devices through the Job Access program, which is funded by the Commonwealth Government, and that's really helping me. It makes things much easier for me at work, where I was really struggling and just beginning to wonder how I was going to manage. So that's my story.
Thank you, Joanne, for sharing with us. Can I ask David Brady now to talk, and then we'll open up the floor.
I will go and stand over in the speaker's corner. I'm not going to speak as David Brady as an individual. Some of you might already know my story. I was born in a country town in Armidale. I was actually born profoundly to severely deaf, and I was only diagnosed about 1 year old when my parents realised that crashing pots and pans was not really normal for a young child of that age. Of course, nowadays we have early newborn screening, so would have been diagnosed a lot earlier. I wear hearing aids. They are probably the top of the band. I can't use cochlear implants because there's my audiogram is sophisticated. It's basically the hearing aids do a good job, and that's fine for me. But as we all know, they are very expensive. The more power, the more grunt, the more expense. And it's just one of those expenses for me. I'm trying to work out, okay, it's like an investment plan. Instead of investing in a property, I'm actually investing in me, in my hearing aid. At the moment, till the day I get a family, I'm sure I'll face the same dilemma as many Australians who have to choose between the son or daughter's school trip, treatment, or the hearing aids, so you can work and participate in society to bring home the bread and butter along with your partner. It's a crucial question to take place to you. Even as an individual working through the ladder in the workforce, there is a glass window, a ceiling. That's the best way to describe a hearing loss. They're in your workforce. But between you, me, and my colleagues, the window, the thicker depends on how my hearing or how my communication goes with the colleagues. The ceiling is invisible because your colleagues don't know whether they're confident for you to be promoted or be part of the workforce. People lose faith in you because they know they see the hearing aids or the signing, or they see me and they go, well, not too sure if you can integrate with people, not too sure if you manage people. I have a master's degree in MBA in sports management. I've studied probably with a note taker somehow, sat in front of the classroom in the UK. I've also got postgraduates and I've got a lot of qualifications. I remember going to the Centrelink. You know what the first question they said to me? Oh, we got a great job for you. Cleaning the aisles of Woolworths, because that would just suit you. You don't have to talk to people. Fortunately now, I'm a general manager and soon to be CEO of Here For You. So I like to go back to Centrelink when I find that young gentleman and explain, look, deaf and hard of hearing people can do. What I see of the NDIS, and I share your concerns, is to break the diswelfare, my diswelfare. For me, I now worked out I have to find to get 2 new hearing aids that are powerful enough, that has the new speech recognition technology that will enable me to take the next step and to be more productive for myself, but also for the Australian people. Because remember, we are Australians. At the moment, the glass window is there, and I hope our nation's politicians and our state politicians will realise that in this room we have a workforce, we have a productive, we want to work. And out there we also want to participate, we want to engage, not only just work for money, but work as volunteers in the community, and that's important. So I might like to call myself, when I was in Parliament the other day, I called myself probably a good investor, but only for myself. But I always wonder, all that money I spent on my hearing aids, what would happen if I was able to take a holiday? Be able to invest in a new car, replace the 1983 Ford Astra or whatever I got out in the parking lot. If I had that security and relaxation and I'm able to concentrate on being productive, like many others, with the NDIS, if it happens for us, or if there's anything like a tax break or something else that will enable us to be part of the scheme. And also to help our employers, small businesses and large businesses, to understand and include us and not feel that, oh, we have a deaf person or a hard of hearing person, we've got to pay a bit more to have them involved. We can't have them managers because we have to get more. We don't want to say that. We want to hear the word. We like to include them because they're good citizens, they're productive, and we want them because we actually help others. Please help us. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Now, is there any questions or anybody would like to make a comment from the floor? You're very welcome to. Anthony, did you want to buy me some hearing aids? Thank you, Anthony. Anthony has just recently been made a professor. Now, I don't know whether that means you're capped or dopped or what you are, but I do congratulate you. And let me tell you, everybody, one of the reasons I asked Anthony, not only does he know an awful lot about our hearing needs, but it helps me as in the DRC that I can say, well, Professor Anthony Hogan, it always makes, it looks better on letterhead, looks better in letters, that you can claim some expertise that governments look up to. And thank you for being here. Your glasses are just...
It adds to the IQ.
They're you.
That's right.
They're you, Anthony.
And for those who are enjoying the professor jokes, I am accepting hand-knitted toe socks. Look, why am I worried about the NDIS? Why aren't I excited about it? On the one hand, NDIS is like sunshine. How could it be bad for you? It's like eating spinach. It's got to be good for you. But there are a few buts, and I just want to go through, for the record, what I think, having looked at the rules overnight, about who's in, what's in, and importantly, what's out, and the implications this has for us. So first of all, to be in, you need substantially reduced functional capacity. This is supposed to be not a medical model. And my other friends with other disabilities are kind of concerned that we're going to have to turn up and make ourselves look disabled, whatever construct of disabled is, in order to qualify, while in the rest of our life we're trying to be empowered and mainstreamed and participating. And I'm worried about who decides. Does Sue decide that I get the service? Do you decide, our audiologist, our speech path, decide if I get the service? If I've got to have a substantially reduced function and it's not a medical model, who's going to determine that I'm in or I'm out, and on what basis? It's got to affect our social and economic participation. Well, I think we're kind of in on that one through the Access Economics report. We only cost $11 billion a year. It's not very much. I beg your pardon, Polly. I stand corrected. Social and economic participation. The Access Economic report put it in terms of the lost productivity at around $11 billion a year. Severe difficulty in independently performing tasks. What does that mean for us? If I'm a fluent signer Am I having severe difficulty in independently performing tasks? But I think we know that the signers are going to be in, but are the lip readers in? And as Hayden said before, how are we going to tell? Not in terms of whether they're in, but in terms of who's going to pay for the services which are not currently paid for, which teach people how to lip read and which are not funded. Can perform tasks or participate only with the assistance or via technology. I think we're in on that one, although there are some buts. Less than 65. I think the big plus for the NDIS is of people of working age with severe or profound hearing loss, that we might get access to devices to close that gap in our national policy. But when you look at the detail further in terms of what's in it and what they mean here, a lot of it doesn't apply to us. Home modification. Employment services, yes. Is communication training in? Because rehabilitation is out. And we've always used these phrases, hearing rehabilitation. So are we in or are we out? Interpreters seem to be in. Is my phone in if it's a communication aid? What's in, what's out? Is my computer, which I use as a point of communication, in or out? What seems to be definitely out are services that are already provided, such as the ones I mentioned earlier. Hearing services, the Hearing Services Act, and its universal service obligations. That, in my understanding of the legislation, is for Aboriginal people who have, 4, 5 times the number of people with hearing loss, and who we know are grossly underserviced already. Children, as I've mentioned, are covered under that Act. Possibly people unemployed are covered by that Act as well. Surgery is out, so the cost of surgery is not in. And I also should make the comment that under the private hearing health system, even when you get qualified for the devices, you get $300? Not even 10%. I'm worried about the community-based aspects of it. You know, I'm getting a bit grey now. I was around for the Richmond report when we made services community-based. She was around as well. I was around when the Deaf Society of New South Wales said all our services would be provided mainstream. We know what happens in this situation. The average community person is afraid of hearing loss, is afraid of deafness, doesn't know how to communicate with us, and we get locked out of the services. It's a great ideology, it's just never worked in practice, and if we don't have our own test sites, how are they ever going to work out the system? 2 more comments. If I want to be mean and grumpy, I'm worried about a resource grab. This is a service which is going to meet real needs for people with other disabilities. How will it meet our needs in particular is what I'm worried about. But I'm most worried about the policy implications, that once the NDIS is in, and if we're not properly covered, I think the government will rightly say, we've done disability, we're moving on. So if we're not in now, and there's not a national strategy to include us, where will we fit in? I could go on, but I will stop.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what are we looking? 10 to 8. Have I got any more comments that people might like to make? Because you're very welcome to. This lady here.
I don't know to what degree it will provide some reassurance. I need to go out there. Sorry. I'm Cheryl Wilson from the Office of Hearing Services, which manages the Hearing Services program on behalf of the Australian Government. And it may provide some level of reassurance that we are in discussion with FAXIA and the NDIS transition agency about how our program and NDIS will interface. It is not my understanding that our Act excludes people who are deaf or hard of hearing from the NDIS, and so those discussions are ongoing. So hopefully that offers some level of reassurance that the issues are being considered within the NDIS team.
Thank you, Cheryl. I saw another hand somewhere. No? Well, that's okay. We might get home tonight. Let me then, in closing, add a few words, and I'll ask David to say a couple of things. I think it's fair to say that here tonight you have witnessed how a hearing loss can impose a lifelong burden on a family, on a person with this disability, affecting their home life, their schooling, relationships, their social needs, and their opportunities for gainful employment. To put it simply, a hearing loss affects one's entire existence for life. The need to communicate is constant, all day long and throughout the night, 24/7, from when we first awake till we're not off. The need is persistent, from a mother who needs to hear a baby cry, to the Prime Minister in Parliament, to lovers whispering sweet nothings. I was at a meeting on the weekend, and someone said to me, she asked her husband, why don't you tip me sweet nothings to me? And he said, woman, if I did that, the whole of Nightcliff and Darwin would hear you and me. There are no whispers of love in my house, other things, but no whispers. Going to a job interview is difficult. I have people come to my office and they borrow specialised listening equipment just so that they can try and hear the questions from across the table. How does a kid learn at school with a teacher to spell, or a mother talk with the children? You know how mothers, when they prepare the evening meal and the little sits there, my granddaughters do it, and they're doing their spelling. Mum just talks, and it looks so simple. There is no way I can do that, and most of the mothers in this room can't either and never will, but they need some support to help them aim for that goal. We all need to access the message, however simple or complex it may be. Communication is fundamental to life and is in every aspect of every day or every person. We have to be able to hear. We need to communicate. Can I have my storytellers stand, please? We have Liz, Joanne, Amanda, David. To you who've come as our guest from the Parliament, from the government, I'll let you go home with one message, probably the best message and the most important one you've had in many long days. Look into the face of these, the hearing impaired in Canberra. We look the same in New South Wales, in Tasmania, and in all the other states. Hearing impairment for us is an ongoing fact, an ongoing cost that never goes away. New batteries weekly, new hearing aids every 4 or 5 years, interpreter needs, not enough interpreters, new processors for cochlear implants. The list goes on. Special doorbells. I can sell you a fire alarm for $20 from Bunnings that works for everybody who hears. It costs you $400 to buy one that will wake you up if you're deaf. We need to know when the baby cries. I have a young colleague who has had a baby recently, can't hear, is deaf. The husband the same. We've gone out to the local Rotary clubs to try and raise $2,000 to put together a package of equipment that will let that mother know when the baby cries, when there's someone come to visit to tell her how beautiful her new baby looks like, to if there's a fire in her house. It never goes away. please remember us when you make your decisions. David.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. What a great forum in this facility. Especially say thank you to Sue and Kate, Jeremy and Gay, who were here earlier, for coming and sharing us your views. We'd also like to thank the Department of Hearing Service for being here. Please, thank you very much. Also, I'd like to thank the interpreters, Mandy, and the other interpreters, this Cerno captioner. Also to thank ACE for the webcasting. Very important that we actually got this out. It's actually captioned and they can see the interpreters live across the country. Also, I'd like to, I've just been told that we have probably about 73 people squashed in this room, so please understand why we're hot. But that's 73 people. Share the message, what you heard tonight, with your friends, your family, and other people who are deaf, hard of hearing in Canberra. Alright? We've learned tonight that we've met the leaders, the people who are guiding the panels, the co-chairing, who's part of the NDIS task force. We've heard from them how this whole thing is going to roll out. The 2,500 people from the 1st of July 2014. We've heard from our politicians their promises and their commitment to the NDIS. Every time I go to the House, they have told me to tell everybody in the deafness sector, the NDIS, they support it. The message that we send, that you've given us tonight, is we'll keep on working with the ACT Deafness Resources Centre, with everybody, our members, our organisation, individual. Please keep reminding your representatives. Don't forget us. That's what we heard tonight as well when Professor Anthony Hogan mentioned we need to keep being remembered. We need to keep tapping on the shoulder, because remember, in a circle of children, the one who always taps the hardest and yells the hardest and stamps up and down usually get what they want. I'm sure mums agree. I also understand we heard some great stories tonight. The ability to participate, to engage, I think they're the two key words that our sector are telling our people, our leaders and the NDIS. This is an opportunity that we've learned. If you include us, we'll pay back big time. If you forget about us, you're going to forget about us, and we're not going to help you get into Parliament next time. Simple as that. So, that's what I'm going to say. The deaf, the hearing impaired, chronic ear disorders, their families, friends, employers, please remember the communications technique. The communications, I've been told, is king. Please remember us, like Pete says, and all of us said, when you make your decisions. Good night, thank you, and have a great evening and safe trip home. Thank you.